2025 was a doozy for Harry and Meghan. What started with manic frolicking on the beach, repeatedly writing 2025 in the sand, has finally ended. Really quite spectacularly for Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, as one of the worst years to date, but in entirely new ways this time around. Previously, we have seen them have horrible years due to really, really bad choices in attacking the royal family, for example, doing a TV show where you lie the whole time, releasing a terrible book full of lies, and also cringy details. Remember the cream, the Elizabeth Arden cream? It haunts me to this day. Horrible judgment. Or 2024, take that as a great example. They tried to be faux royals super hard. They did their little publicized vacations. None of it worked well. But this year, they have failed in totally new ways. They just keep finding new ways to fail. This time in business, in reputation, in ways that matter more, that are a little bit more high stakes in terms of their own personal trajectories and like potential future career and opportunity sorts of ways. 2025 has big consequences for Harry and Meghan. The vision for this year, we were led to believe, at least by Meghan, was for Meghan to have a professional separation from Harry, which she was floating a lot last year, and we've heard a lot about this year that she's professionally separating from Harry. And we were led to believe that this was because Harry was going to focus more on a philanthropic image, the ex-prince type of vibe. And we did see that. He sort of retreated back into his role or his format that he once knew that was more familiar to him. We did see him do many events this year where it felt like he was trying to have the same type of vibe that he did when he was a working royal. Meanwhile, the Meg this year was supposed to launch herself into a successful Joanna Gaines-esque empire of loose spread and a boring Netflix show. She even sought out about a dozen PR stunts to try to prove it and convince people it was so, but it didn't work. Once again, telling people what to think and what to believe and just saying it over and over in interviews doesn't make it happen. This year has had some of the most serious failings since they left the royal family in 2020. Some of the most high-profile flops, like Netflix, some of the most high-stakes fails, like their charity stuff, and harsh realities of their faux royal dream collapsing in a rather serious manner. But before we begin this 2025 recap, I would like to invite you to subscribe, click that like button and the hype button, but only if you want to. Now let's first jump back to the end of summer 2025. August was capped off by the Bloomberg interview, which was a complete and utter disaster, with too many blunders to count. And by the way, all the interviews that I mentioned today are going to be available on the playlist linked at the end of today's video and on my page. If you navigate to the playlists, there's one specifically that just has analysis of Harry and Meghan interviews. It's one of my favorite playlists. There's also one with 2025 highlights that covers everything else we're going to be talking about in today's video. So in the spirit of not repeating myself every time I'm talking about an event or an interview, just go ahead and take a look at those playlists, because everything we're talking about in today's video has its own video or more than one video on those playlists. But anyway, Bloomberg was super silly. It made Meghan look ridiculous and way more out of touch than she ever has before. And With Love Meghan was released, the part 2 of it anyway, was released on the exact same day as the Bloomberg interview, so they didn't exactly complement one another. Instead, they competed for headlines, which was a big mistake. Meghan doesn't have the star power and anticipation to do like what maybe Taylor Swift could do, which is have an interview and something released on the same day. The Meg can't handle that. Her publicity and her public image isn't that strong, and her fan base isn't that big. Instead, what happens is these things get buried and compete for headlines, and people miss out on at least 50% of what's happened that day. They either miss the interview, or they miss the release of the show, or they miss both. But With Love Meghan Part 2 didn't really succeed anyway. I guess publicity wouldn't have really helped because it was heavily criticized, it performed way worse than Part 1, and it was super stale. At that point, the footage was well over a year old. So it just didn't even have a vibe that felt fresh or interesting beyond all the other problems that there were and Meghan herself being boring and creating a bad show. It also just came across stale, old news. It didn't make it into the top 10 and had an even worse Rotten Tomatoes score than the first part, which was hard to imagine because the first part ranked really poorly also. Following this, September was actually a little bit more low profile for Meghan. She probably thought that Bloomberg and With Love Meghan was going to be so big that she would just kind of ride those vibes throughout September. I don't know. But Harry went to the UK and had his first visit with King Charles in years and proceeded to complain about it and cause problems. And he went to Ukraine. So he actually did worse as far as like behavior in the public eye than Meghan did during the month of September. So, 1 point for Meghan. She wasn't the worst Sussex in the month of September. Harry's petulant arguing in the media about his visit with the king only made things worse. It made Harry look like he has not grown or changed or learned anything from the time of estrangement from his family. No lessons, no understanding, no concept of actually trying to keep some privacy for the king. None of that. So it was really disappointing. But after that mess, the Meg came through in October, outdoing Harold's bad behaviors in September. She really did. She took things really far. She kicked off the month of October with a cringe, laughable, and embarrassing appearance at the Balenciaga show. She made a fool of herself in absolutely every way imaginable. The outfit was horrendous. The walk was so silly. She looked like a child walking in her mom's heels, trying to pretend to be a model. It's literally insane. I don't know how she does it, but it is just so embarrassing and cringe. I mean, look at this. She was sucking in her cheeks very obviously. Like, I don't understand how a grown woman would behave this way. I don't get it. I can't grasp it. She also laughed at a model who fell down on the runway, and icing on the cake, she invited herself to this show. She wasn't like on the guest list or on the radar. No, she asked if she could come. You can't make it up. It's too rich. This disaster was quickly followed by their trip to New York City, the Project Healthy Minds event, and their ridiculous Humanitarian of the Year award that they don't deserve, which they bizarrely used this opportunity to announce the fact that they were abandoning the Parents Network. Remember the Jane Pauley interview from last year, from 2024, where they announced the Parents Network as this big flagship project for Archewell? It was going to be their big deal. And less than a year, or like exactly a year later, they had already decided to basically give it away or shut it down. It was over. It was ending. Because Parents Network was actually rather redundant. Parents Together is a well-established nonprofit that already kind of had all the same features that Meghan and Harry's lame Parents Network was claiming or trying to have. So they just told those parents to go ahead and scoot on over to Parents Together and washed their hands of Parents Network. It's gone. It no longer has its own identity. How strange, especially to announce it when you're receiving an award connected to the very thing that you're saying, oh yeah, and by the way, this is because we did Parents Network and we're already giving it away, but thanks for the award. Also, what else did they really do to deserve that award? Absolutely nothing. Later that month, we endured the Fortune Summit, which provided us with hilarious sound bites such as, I love paper, when asked if she was going to put out a cookbook, and other embarrassing blunders. The Fortune Summit, it was also revealed Meghan once again sort of invited herself along. She had her publicist weasel her way into getting a spot. She basically had a PR spot, not a requested guest. So no wonder they got booed at the Dodgers Stadium after that. But before we jump into the absolute train wreck that was fall 2025, let's have a quick recap of key points from earlier in the year because the trajectory really took a nosedive. 2025 began with their high-profile, very obvious, not subtle at all, pronouncement that it was their year of redemption. But they immediately ruined any and all potential for this by acting like absolute fools during the California wildfires. They walked around people's burned down homes, doing nothing to help, just there to, I guess, look at the devastation, earning themselves disaster tourist labels, and tons of backlash. They were the only celebrities or famous people to publicize any of this, and they called and tipped off the press that they were going to go walk around and view the devastation from the fires. The most insane thing you could possibly think of. The lack of empathy here is really rather concerning. It was poor etiquette all around and a huge controversy because, like I said, absolutely no other celebrities or famous people publicized their activities and movements during this time the way Harry and Meghan did. We saw some tweets, we saw some people spotted here and there doing things, but not the way Harry and Meghan did it. And during this time, they also pushed back the With Love Meghan season, which I think was a mistake. I understand they framed it as out of respect for, the California wildfires. And they were the worst in the state's history, I believe. So they were a big, significant disaster. They were. However, it's not normal to push back a show for a natural disaster, and it only made the show feel more stale and more like old news. It really took some of the wind out of the sails that we had already been waiting for it for so long, and then there's yet another delay. I think it was a big mistake in terms of momentum. But February saw them attend the Invictus Games in Canada. Meghan made a very strange manic speech to an unenthused crowd, and on March 4th, her With Love Meghan series finally debuted, already nearly a year old and a tragically horrible show. Just so incredibly boring and pointless. As we've already done countless critiques of this episode by episode, I'll just refer you to that playlist for detailed recaps. But the general consensus was that this was more like Meghan's version of a reality show than anything else. And she simply didn't have the charisma, the talent, or the likability to pull this sort of a show off, and it flopped hard. The biggest blunder that came out of the part one, or scandal of, honestly, of the entire show's run, was the Sussex name moment where Meghan was really, really rude to Mindy Kaling and laughed and was like, "It's so funny you keep calling me Markle because I'm a Sussex now." What? How did that get past editing? It was a horrible display of bad manners and just super cringe. It was awful. It was really, really bad. And perhaps the most important misfire of the entire show's experience was not having the products for As Ever actually ready and in hand when they filmed this show. Because the show and the brand were supposed to be fully integrated with one another and help each other out. The products were supposed to help support the show, and the show was supposed to help sell the products. And Meghan failed to get this stuff done on time, and therefore the show didn't have any of the products to help advertise or push. And so there was just this huge disconnect, and it took away a lot of momentum from the brand, and the show had lost its momentum. So the whole thing was just a mess, and probably really disappointing for Netflix, because having products visible in a show that are also on sale when it premieres is hugely beneficial to sales. It just is. It's a great marketing concept in general, but Meghan, of course, messed it up because she has no understanding of business or marketing. She has very, very poor judgment. It's really insane. We haven't seen public figures like this make this many mistakes this consistently and in this high profile of a situation very often at all. It's extremely rare. But the products for As Ever, they didn't even go on sale until a full month after the show debuted. It was terrible. She also made the poor decision to have a People magazine interview come out at the same time as the show debut, which once again ended up crowding the headlines and took away from publicity exclusively about the show. March was also the month where the setbacks scandal went public. It was revealed that the main point of conflict that caused Harry to have a public tantrum was that the chair, Dr. Sophie Chanduka, wouldn't put out a pro-Meghan statement after Meghan Markle bossed her around on stage after the polo match in 2024. How petty, how on brand for Harry and Meghan. We absolutely love this for them, don't we? And in April, Meghan did the Jamie Kern-Lima podcast. Peak weirdness. Like, I didn't know things could get any weirder, but they sure did. And you would think that this would be a moment where the Sussexes took a pause, a little step back, reassess, think things through. But no, they did none of that. Meg doubled down in her giant man pants in New York City at the Time 100 summit, which confused all of us. What is this crazy lady doing here? I don't know. This was ridiculous. It made no sense for Meghan to be there. She provided absolutely no value. It was basically a regurgitation of the People magazine interview and the Jamie Kern-Lima podcast put together. It was dumb, quite frankly. The next big thing on their calendar this year was the launch of Confessions of a Sucky Business Lady. This was Meghan Markle's desperate attempt at podcasting, proving people wrong, proving the Spotify guy wrong, that she can successfully podcast. But no, it was so bad, almost nobody even wrote an article about it. Really, it was basically ignored. And naturally, Lemonada was unwilling to order more episodes. It's already over and done with, and no, it went out with a whimper. Nobody even cared. The following month, Harry kept their controversial image alive by traveling to China from California for a conference focused on environmentalism for Travelist, I believe it was. How can anyone take him seriously with these types of stunts? To travel that far, probably private, to talk about environmentalism? Doesn't he remember when everybody got mad at people for traveling via private jet and big yachts to some other environmental thing? Like all the celebrities, like Leonardo DiCaprio and all of them, got backlash for that, and now people don't do that anymore. At least most of them. Harry still does, because he can't learn. He also gave another interview, this time to BBC, where he was complaining and whining that he lost his security battle with the UK to get automatic police protection. It really didn't come off well because the public opinion and the legal opinion are well established and consistent for years now. Now that Harry and Meghan are not working royals, it doesn't make sense for them to have automatic police protection, taxpayer funded or not. They're simply not entitled to it anymore. And therefore, he remains on a case-by-case basis. So complaining about this in an interview really didn't help anything. He also made a blunder in June during a conference on digital safety or something like that. Stop inviting Harry to these things. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He claimed that Meg was the most trolled person in 2018, which is false. This is absolutely false. She was the most Googled person in 2018 because nobody knew who the heck she was, and she married Harry in 2018. So everybody was like, who did he marry? Meghan Markle. Google that real quick. Oh, nobody cares. Once again, how can anybody take Harry seriously when he's so hypocritical and can't even get the facts right? Around this same time, Meghan went on to Emma Greed's Aspire podcast and came across inept, lacking business knowledge, and, couldn't remember what imposter syndrome was. She struggled to mention, in fact, didn't mention not one person who she admired in the business world. It really wasn't a very good showing. It was once again very repetitive, the same type of stuff that she had been saying in the Time 100, Fast Company interview, Jamie Kern-Lima podcast, People magazine. Same stuff said once again on another interview podcast. Another chief complaint from all these interviews that Meghan has been doing this year is that every single time she's talking about something or asked a question, she circles it back to some sort of a personal anecdote, and she struggles to keep anything topical or really dive into an actual business question in any meaningful way. She always finds a way to circle it back to herself and that she likes paper or that this was her vision. That's not what the question is, Meghan. People are asking you something else entirely. Also, her scheduled appearance at the 2025 Night of Wonder Gala at the Los Angeles Museum was canceled, which I'm sure she was very sad about because it was another opportunity for her to get her hands on a microphone, and it got taken away. It got canceled. Poor thing. Speaking of canceled, As summer drew to a close in August, just before part 2 was released, it was revealed that Meghan and Harry had lost their Netflix deal. No more episodes of anything ordered, and although they have a first refusal deal still, it's not the same at all. It's certainly a downgrade, no question about it. There's no, a revenue stream coming in for them at this point. There's no promise of picking up future things to fulfill the contract. Absolutely not. This is a situation where if Harry and Meghan show up with something that Netflix thinks is really, really good, then they will pick up things one at a time on a case-by-case basis. Oh, that phrase again, case-by-case basis. It's almost like Harry and Meghan's reputation is so bad nobody wants to commit. So the beginning of the year was Meghan's product launches, Invictus, and a flurry of almost panicked publicity to try to justify her attempts, manipulate the narratives around it, and try to control the perception of her projects. The wrong approach entirely. And as she lost Netflix, Harry and Meghan gave away Parents Network, and was a complete embarrassment at Paris Fashion Week, fall ushered in a serious nosedive for the Sussexes. Beginning with November's events, which turned out to be the catalyst for Meredith Maine's resignation, Meghan and Harry created a whole new scandal for themselves by committing a terrible social faux pas on several fronts when they attended Kris Jenner's birthday, and the subsequent photo scandal ensued. This created a triple-layered problem for them PR-wise. They looked bad for publicly attending rather than sneaking in the back or skipping the event entirely during Remembrance Day weekend. They offended and or irritated the Kardashians by requesting the photos be taken down. And this whole thing caused so many headlines to effectively ignore Kris and focus on this drama instead. And on top of it all, they were pestering the other guests for networking. It was bad on all fronts, and she wore this tragedy. We are doing a 2025 fashion recap within the next week or so, so click that subscribe button now. Meghan's post that said, "Once served, always serving," for Remembrance Day and Veterans Day also didn't land. It only reminded people of their lack of service, their inability to serve the UK, their unwillingness to exit their roles respectfully and gracefully, petulantly claiming service is universal, as we have proceeded to see Harry and Meghan be almost exclusively self-serving. Plus, when you put a post out like that and then you're seen doing this and being so worried about the photographs, it shows us what Harry and Meghan are actually worried about. Also in November, at the very end of November, was the release of the Harper's Bazaar interview, with hideous photos, a cringy interview, and the huge title scandal was revealed, where we learned that Meghan Markle, or rather had confirmation, that Meghan Markle was having a staff member announce her title anytime anybody came within her vicinity, whether they were children or adults, whether it was one person or many, it didn't matter. There was literally someone whose assignment for the day was to shout out Duchess of Sussex every time Meghan was coming around. Super cringe. This was one of the worst possible things to come out publicity-wise all year long, because it only confirmed people's assessment of Meghan, that she is self-important, obsessed with her title, and using it for advantage at all times. The rumors of her over-the-top bizarre behavior were only proven true from Meghan's own interview. Talk about self-sabotage. It's spectacular just how bad she is when it comes to managing her image. And this came right before the holiday special dropped, which was over a year old by the time it was released. And so the tone and the temperature of the public to get this holiday special from Meghan was already really, really bad. The timing of it was really off. And the tone overall was at its worst when this came out at this point. So as December began with Meghan's final breath of With Love Meghan on Netflix, which failed to make the top 10 anywhere, it had a sad 0% from Rotten Tomatoes critics and only 13% from the audience. Really, really tragic. It just was kind of the beginning of this horrendous nosedive. Or rather, I guess Harper's Bazaar was the beginning of the nosedive, because that title scandal was huge controversy in the media. People were dragging Meghan. Even people who were neutral to Meghan were like, what is this? Also, it being so publicly known that Netflix wasn't continuing on in their partnership with Harry and Meghan, didn't really make people feel enthused about With Love Meghan. There wasn't very much advertising for it. It kind of felt like an afterthought, just getting rid of it because it was sitting there waiting to be released. But next, Harry and Meghan released another weird Christmas card, which we're discussing in greater depth in an upcoming video. Be sure you're subscribed. But let me just say this. What other famous randos release a Christmas card? None. It's just not the done thing, and Harry and Meghan, in their current status, should not be doing it. But this is when things really started to hit the fan. Late December of 2025, Harry and Meghan rebranded and basically relinquished Archewell to fiscal sponsorship. Meredith resigned and James Holt quickly followed. With their brand in shambles, both their for-profit and their charitable endeavors, they were sure to close out this year, despite all these failings and all these controversies, with a message to leave room for new opportunities in 2026. I kid you not. That was their end of year message. Leave room for new opportunities. Honestly, it's sort of sad given how bad things went and the fact that Harry and Meghan are probably not going to be getting very many opportunities in 2026 with how bad they blew things in 2025. And this is what I mean by their failures this year being a little bit more high stakes for them on a personal and business level, because Netflix, I personally don't like much Netflix content. I'm not a big fan of Netflix in general, but they are considered a big deal in terms of like streamers. They are considered a big profitable streaming business and service. They are. That's undeniable. And they were kind of one of the pioneers in streamers. Were they not? So for Harry and Meghan to fail that badly and basically be dropped, but it was a nice drop because they're still open to picking up random things, perhaps, maybe. But that high profile of a failure, plus the as ever failure, and even setting Netflix aside and the Netflix deal falling apart aside, you have the ratings of the shows. Nobody's watching it. Nobody likes it. The people who have watched it didn't keep watching it. This is really, really serious for their track record because Netflix and this as ever thing and their philanthropy were their last things to cling to. Spotify's gone. Writing books didn't work out. They don't really have anything else going on. Meghan can't act, okay? That leaves keeping these things going. And With Love Meghan is done. She teased that she might try an Instagram version or social media version of her show, but I doubt she could handle the negative feedback. As ever, probably can't survive this way. I mean, I just don't see it. It's not like it had super strong metrics. And Archewell basically going under as we know it. It's restructured so extensively that it's a completely new situation. It's basically just Harry and Meghan. There's no business element to Archewell. It's so small that they really have nothing left. You'll notice in 2025, there were far fewer charity visits or outings. Thank goodness we were spared from any publicized vacations this year, but there were these more high stakes failures. Very expensive fails and loss of revenue. Deals that were not only supporting their lifestyle, but were signaling to others their level of success, star power, and value to a company. Now with Netflix gone, podcasting eliminated, book deals over, no wonder they had to effectively shut down Archewell the way that it was. If you haven't already, click that subscribe button now, because you don't want to miss our fashion recap. It'll be really funny. And we also have a biggest controversies of 2025. Leave it in the comments what you think the worst moment of 2025 was for Harry and Meghan. I cannot wait to read your thoughts below, and your comment might even be featured in our controversies video coming up. Also, what rebrand do you think we can look forward to for 2025? 2024 was the faux royal attempt nonsense. 2025 was business, obviously, which we know how that panned out. Not well. So I wonder what you think 2026 will bring. Thank you for joining me for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have a happy day ahead. Happy New Year, everybody. Bye!